Florida State lost. Part of me just wants to do the next 10 minutes on that. Part of me, you thought you were going to go beat Georgia, and you can't even beat Georgia Tech.
Stooges.
Part of me just wants to literally laugh at Florida State because
I'm for it.
Because it's fun, because they would do the same in reverse, because it is what it is. However, there's levels to this, right? First of all, the fact that Florida State has already lost is massive for everyone else in the ACC, specifically those that don't have Florida State on their schedule like NC State, right? Because even if the Noles win out, even if the Florida State wins the rest of their ACC games, they'll be 7-1 with a loss to Georgia Tech, which means if NC State goes 7-1 but beats Georgia Tech, they'll be in a very good spot when it comes to tiebreakers and everything else for getting into the ACC championship. So it's already a good spot to be when you haven't played a game, yet you're already ahead of Florida State, who has many media members and analysts' prediction to be in the ACC championship. The game the actual game, the Florida State Georgia Tech game, I think proved one of three things. Or it could be all of the three things, but at least one of these three things is true. One, Georgia Tech could be legit, right? If Florida State might be the 10th best team in the country, Georgia Tech might be surprisingly the 9th best team in the country. That could be true. Florida State could be a fraud. That's the other thing that might be true.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would explain why you would lose despite being the 10th ranked team in the country. The other would be week 0 means nothing. There's a possibility that it's too early, nobody's in rhythm, and you're going to look back on these week 0 games as outliers. SMU, if they go on a run, it'll be like, oh, remember that weird game they almost lost to Nevada? If Florida State goes on a run, it'll be like, hey, remember before the season started when Georgia Tech beat Florida State? Like week 0 might just be weird. Let's talk about each of those individually. If Georgia Tech is legit, if they're a legit contender, if they're an ACC championship appearance contender, it will be because of their offensive identity. I'm not surprised by how they tried to play. I am a bit surprised how much it worked, but you can go back and listen to our shows last week where we talked about they're going to try to run the ball, they're going to try to grind it to a pulp, they are going to try to run the ball, they are going to try to make sure Florida State doesn't have opportunities to get up and down the field. They're going to try to run the ball. There were only 14 possessions in that game. It's the fewest in an FBS game since November 28th of 2020. 14 possessions. That is Georgia Tech deliberately shortening the game, and that is Florida State participating in it for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know why they were content to just slow it down. That happens in basketball more than it happens in football, where you have a team that's great in transition, and then one team just slows it down, and for some reason the team stops running in transition, and it's just, all right, you don't want to control the tempo at all. I got you. I don't know why the world was surprised that Georgia Tech had a creative run blocking plan. It's the thing I associate most with Georgia Tech this year is they have an offensive line coach as their head coach. That doesn't happen very often. And if Brent Key, who's their head coach now, if he didn't do exceptionally well as the interim, I don't think it would have happened there. Right? They made him the interim head coach. He did very well. They gave him the head coaching job. That's like the only way you get a run-blocking offensive line coach, head coach. Everybody wants the quarterback guru. This guy was like, watch the 97 different run-blocking schemes I can throw at Florida State. That'll be my flex. 18 of Georgia Tech's 25 first down plays came on designed runs. Georgia Tech had 20 total designed runs outside the tackles, averaged 6.9 yards per carry. They averaged 3.2 yards before contact against one of the most physically impressive defensive lines in the country. Just like you shouldn't be surprised when Lincoln Riley's offense has like cool pass concepts, you should not be surprised that the Georgia Tech offense had cool run concepts. Could also be Florida State was just fraud. And I don't want to single it on one person. The DJU that played on Saturday looked like the DJ Uiagalelei that played at the end of his Clemson term, which was not even like exceptionally good or bad. It was exceptionally not trusted to do anything. At one point, he was like 12 for 14. His average air yards were negative 0.1 yards, which meant the average place where the target of his pass was behind the line of scrimmage, and he had thrown 14 passes. That's absurd. They trusted him to do nothing. Turn him into like Tim Tebow in the NFL. He's 6'5", 250. Just turn him into a bulldozer. Trust him to do something, or else you might as well have no quarterback on the field.
I know you noted all those 4-star top guys they brought in from Alabama and all these other places, and it's like, what did it get them?
They didn't trust the quarterback to use any of those guys.
Exactly.
And then, yes, it could just be week 0 where it's too early to seriously judge a team, and it's going to look like an outlier at the end of the year. Maybe. I don't tend to lean that way because it was so obvious that they didn't trust DJU. I tend to lean towards Florida State's going to have more talent than most teams they play against, and they're going to find themselves in dogfights against lesser talented teams because of the way they've constructed their lineup. Which, by the way, is the risk you take when you're Florida State and you decide we're just going to go to the portal and build a new offense or a new team every single year. If you miss on just one of those guys at a crucial position, it's going to be tough. There's going to be years where it all comes together. It'll look like last year. There's going to be years where it doesn't. It'll look like it did on Saturday against Georgia Tech.
And you and I talked about last week that Georgia Tech is a team that if you don't bring your A game, they're going to get you.
Yep.
But you can beat them. But
you got to play your.
You have to play your A game in order to beat them.
I would say like B plus or above maybe. If you bring a B, Georgia Tech's just going to maul you. They're just going to be like, hey, we're going to score 25, 24 points, 28 points. You're going to have to do something because we got a running game that works.
And, of course, that final drive for that game-winning touchdown was just Georgia Tech running the ball for several minutes.
By the way, we've talked about Haynes King, the quarterback for Georgia Tech. Doesn't look like an NFL quarterback. Looks like a fantastic college quarterback. He was getting lit up and then somehow falling forward for another 4 yards, and he's not the biggest dude out there. I was impressed by his toughness in that one, whatever it took to get a win.